I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the new Souls-like, the First Berserker Khazan, which sits in the same realm as the Nioh games on the Souls-like spectrum. But I don't really care about classification, I just care about how amazing this game's boss roster is for the main story. Every major mission ends with a boss fight, and with Khazan's heavy focus on intense combat, epic parries, and split-second dodges, it creates a real dance I haven't felt since Sekiro. Khazan only features 3 weapon types: dual wield, which is a sword and axe, the great sword, and the spear. But each of these weapons has a massive skill tree to explore and unlock as the game progresses, and you can respec into whatever weapon you want and choose what types of attacks to focus on. It's really cool, but it also means that different players will have different experiences with these bosses depending on the weapons they used. I played dual wield the whole game, so some bosses that are easy with the spear might have been tough for me, but that's just part of the fun. This video will only be covering main story boss fights. A majority of this roster gets reused in bonus missions, but with little tricks to make the fights feel different, and it makes the most sense for me to focus on a boss's first appearance in the main campaign. So be sure to parry that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my future videos, and let's jump right in. All 16 bosses in the First Berserker Khazan, ranked. Let me know your favorites down below. At number 16, we have Shaktuka, the 9th major boss of the game. Shaktuka is not a complicated fight, with no second phases or surprise extra health bars to spice up the gameplay. Instead, we're treated to a massive tiger-like experiment that has a decent set of melee combos, and the ability to inflict the Plague status effect with his tongue. The basic combos are pretty easy to brink guard, allowing for some early stagger damage, and as Shaktuka is a corrupted creature, his stamina bar is purple and thus doesn't regenerate after you stop attacking. I much prefer this style to the white stamina bars that regenerate, but that's partly due to my build. The main challenges I faced with Shaktuka were some of the melee attacks that involve throwing itself onto the floor. It would flail down so quickly, and I'd take immediate damage if I didn't see it coming, which was always tough to predict because this boss has a weird amount of downtime between attacks. Shaktuka would often hop around the arena from one spot to the next, bouncing forwards and backwards, so you couldn't tell when the next attack was coming. Which is fine, it's an opportunity to get more hits in or regen your stamina, but I found myself losing the flow a little bit. Then there was the burst attack, which is this delayed claw slash along the floor. Burst attacks are reminiscent of perilous attacks in Sekiro, except you can either dodge them or use a counterattack parry at the point when the attack would hit Khazan. You always want to land these as they do significant health and stamina damage, but for some reason I just never got the hang of Shaktuka's, and I'm petty like that. And so is he. You can't hug the big booty like regular Souls because he's got a back kick that'll make a horse blush. Ironically though, when you do defeat Shaktuka, you can farm him for the Beast Slayer set, which powers up the dual-wield Whirlwind ability, and you will never guess what my favorite move to use in the game was. Bloody Whirlwind. Of course, my least favorite boss was the most vital towards my build. Though as I said at the start of the video, Shaktuka may be my least favorite fight, or the least memorable for lack of a better term, but he's still really well designed. I also want to quickly touch on bosses that have status effects they can use. For the most part, I'm not against this. Many of the fights you'll see in today's video use status effects as a way to punish the player for failing to learn a particular moveset. Yes, if you're doing a Brink Guard build, you'll take some chip damage and some status buildup during certain combos of some bosses, but it's almost never enough to proc the status, and you always have the option of Brink dodging instead. Plus, you'll always get accessory items in a given level that help protect you from major bosses' flavor of the week status effects. So the game gives you the tools. I figured it out, you guys can too. At number 15, we have Elamane, the 8th boss of the game, and such a complicated experience for me. Elamane is a character you meet in Mission 4, and she helps accompany you on your journey. You grow attached to her. She's sweet, she's caring, she wants to help the people, and her dream was to fight side by side with General Khazan. But then she gets captured and pumped full of chaos energy. And the tragedy here is that once you're infected with chaos in this world, there's no way to cure it. Elamein is released from this machine only to fall into a deep rage where Khazan has to defeat her. This is all great, NPC ranking, she's up there. But as a boss, as someone not using the spear moveset with the 90% pierce through shields method, oh, she was a fucking pain. Elamein is a sword and shield user, but you'll be forgiven for forgetting she has a sword because she'd rather turtle behind her shield until the end of time. Her combos are surprisingly agile, not very strong, but enough to whittle your stamina down, and if she exhausts you, which is the state you achieve when you use up all your stamina, she can go in for a brutal grab attack. Elamein is all about wearing Khazan down, and on top of this, anytime you hit her shield, it charges it with electricity, because of course she can fire electric bolts, attack you with a massive melee combo, and use that power to create massive swings of thunder you have to dodge or block. Now, the melee combo, once you learn the rhythm, is actually great for depleting her stamina, but the other two attacks caught me off guard way too much while I was learning them. She can also just charge at you like a train, forcing you to dodge or spam the brink guard button to try and halt her. All of this while she somehow never loses enough stamina to actually get staggered, and her health pool is surprisingly tanky. I think I just got very unlucky that I happened to be using a very frontal assault build with a weapon type that just doesn't work against Elamein, and I will at some point replay the game with the other two weapons to experience what could have been. I know there's also a skill I could have unlocked that allows you to sort of swerve around to the backside of a boss. Maybe it could have been useful there, I don't know. And God forbid, what if I mention the rematch against her in a later bonus mission where she's stronger, better at keeping her stamina, and even more of a nuisance? Genuinely, for my build, this was one of the top 3 hardest bosses in the game, but just not very fun to fight, sadly. If I wanted to fight female Captain America and her shield she yeets at you, I'd just go play Marvel Rivals. At number 14, we have Yatuga, the first boss of the game. And with that title comes a very important position. Yatuga has to sell Khazan to people who have just made it through the opening mission, and I kinda think this boss absolutely nails what it sets out to do. Yatuga is a simple fight, as he's ultimately a souped-up version of the Yeti enemies that you fought during the level. Now, watching my footage back is incredibly cute because I clearly had no idea how to play this game, how to brink guard, how to read Yatuga's moveset, and now I'm watching like, Billy, that's so easy, why are you taking damage? His melee combos are slow, giving you so much wind up to get a potential parry. He jumps away and gives you time to heal every now and then. Some of his combos end with him getting tired. There are so many openings here to take advantage of. I really love his attack where he just rushes at you, and if you dodge out the way, he'll run towards the wall of the arena and stun himself. It's reminiscent of something from Zelda, not Dark Souls or Souls-likes, and I appreciated that. He does get stronger as you whittle his health, with his enraged state happening when he grabs a giant rock, leaps into the air, and throws it at you. Dodge accordingly, it's not that difficult. From here, he gains the ability to shoot an ice breath attack, where if you can sprint, you can get around his side and completely avoid it while also being able to counterattack. And perhaps my favorite move, his back is covered in these icicles, and if you're not careful, he can just fall backwards and impale you on them, which is so smart that I can't help but respect it. You get to fight another variant of him later in the game, which is a lot more health while keeping the same overall moveset, but it basically solidifies that Yatuga is a great starting boss, but once he's let out into the wider game, he loses a little bit of steam. But that's okay, your first boss shouldn't be your best boss. That, in my opinion, is good design. At number 13, we have Aratra, the 5th major boss of the game. And I just want you to know, I went through a lot to get this footage for you. Arachnophobia sucks, and while there is an arachnophobia mode that changes the spiders to these rock-like creatures, I wanted to make sure the spider boss was captured in its intended glory. Aratra initially seems really tough, with a high health pool and some pretty tricky melee swipes and pincer snaps to dodge. And like every other spider in this godforsaken cavern, she has the ability to shoot a webbing attack that, if it hits, will paralyze Khazan for a short while, which will guarantee you taking the next hit in the face. She can also buff her attacks as the fight goes on with the Venom status effect, which is the big brother of the regular poison. If this is inflicted on you, you will die, unless you have an antidote. But that doesn't mean you'll be dealing with this status the entire fight. Aratra coats her 2 massive frontal legs in this substance, but you can target those legs yourself, and if you do enough damage, smash them to pieces, severely limiting the amount of attacks the spider can do while also dealing a massive chunk of health. So suddenly, a fight that seems initially tanky becomes really manageable and quite fun. Once both legs are broken, Aratra can retreat into a hole in the wall, regrowing the legs when she emerges, but it's just a case of rinsing and repeating the same strategy until she goes down. I'd say of the opening few 5 fights, she was the easiest for me to adapt to, and took the least amount of attempts. She's a beast boss done right, I just don't think she's got the overall moveset to hang with the better fights in the game. You can refight her during a late game bonus mission as part of a 3-boss rush, where she's the final fight, and here her legs can't be broken as she's a spirit. It makes the fight a lot more difficult and really asks you to know your combos, know your damage dealing moneymaker, and go to town. 13th may seem low, but Aratra might be one of my favourite spider bosses in Soulslikes/Soulsborne, so take that for what you will. At number 12, we have Balerion, the 11th boss of the game. If there's one critique that I could level at Khazan, it's that the back half of the game is almost entirely focused on mage fights, or fights where a large portion of the moveset is magic-based, which is fine on its own, but these types of enemies often have the ability to teleport away from Khazan, or just naturally keep a distance, which makes chasing them down a real pain. Balerion is the worst of these fights for me, which is a shame because she has some great character design, and I actually like the first half of her battle. She's one of the first bosses to specialize in multiple types of magic: fire, earth, electricity, and her main, necromancy. In the first phase of the fight, she uses her different spells: an electricity beam that I found really hard to dodge, a fire blast that can fire outwards before boomeranging back shortly after, an earth wave that attacks in a straight line, and if you do enough damage, she can coat herself in a shield that protects her from stagger until you can smash it. Combine this with a few regular melee combos, as well as some floor sigil earth magic attacks, and you have a pretty fun first half. Then the enraged state hits, and it's revealed that Balerion is actually a summoner boss. She'll coat the floor in fog and fire necromantic flames at the player, while summoning skulls around herself. You can interrupt this attack at any time, and depending on the skull count she has, she can summon multiple enemy types when the attack finishes. I liked letting her get to full power, as she summons this really cool Reaper enemy with an easy to read moveset, and while it's attacking, she just hangs back. I prefer a one-on-one versus her summoning a horde of archers or an undead assassin any day. The problem is that following the defeat of the Reaper, she spams the heck out of every necromantic spell she knows, to the point where I just kept getting overwhelmed. If you're touched by these attacks, she'll also get a darkness debuff that makes keeping track of everything really hard, and then add on her delayed electricity slam from one of her combos, and you have a fight I just didn't end up enjoying. Especially as she can still use the shield move to stop staggers in phase 2, which allows her to attack as much as she wants. It's a shame. I really tried to like Balerion. I went in with a hyped mindset, especially after the previous mage boss Trocker was fantastic, but I just didn't find her engaging or rewarding. I'd love to see a more in-depth look at how her summoning works, because I think that would make planning around this fight a lot easier. Her character in-game also failed to go anywhere. She's tied to one side mission and then you never hear from her again. She just chills in the hub and comments on the story. At least Tristan and Yulian kept offering more quests and advancing their personal stories as we went along. Balerion, she falls off the face of the earth. At number 11, we have Hismar, the Berserk Dragon, the 14th major boss of the game. Perhaps one of the most important figures in the lore, Hismar was a massive dragon who once attempted to invade the empire of Pelos. Khazan and Ozma both fought in the war against this dragon, with Khazan being the one to slay him. But following the events of the game, Hismar's corpse was brought to the capital city of the Empire, where it was eventually revived by the dark force of chaos, forcing Khazan to reface his toughest foe without any of the allies who helped him in the past. Now, Hismar as a fight is kinda polarizing. Some people despise it because being a massive boss, the camera isn't always the most helpful, and I will admit, I got very frustrated with this fight's stagger system. Whenever you stagger Hismar, he falls forwards, and almost always, I'd get clipped beneath the boss and pushed really far away from the weak point spot. This meant I was constantly missing brutal attack opportunities that drove me nuts. I also heard that the other weapons aren't the best for this fight, as Hismar's head, his weak spot, isn't always on the ground, and thus if you don't have the right skills, you just can't damage the boss as much. With Dual Wield Whirlwind, I had a solid damage dealer, but I needed to learn those combos. Starts with some simple melee claw swipes and head slams, some of which leave Hismar vulnerable, but the true fight comes when he bathes himself in chaos, firing chaos fire blasts in horizontal sweeps, as well as the typical FromSoft style, I'm going to fly upwards and fire breath downwards move, you all know the type. I always hoped he'd do his double laser beam attack since it has an easy timing and tell, allowing me to get close to the boss to do damage while he was powering it. However, this attack was slightly bugged, and sometimes the laser would not actually line up with where Hismar's mouth is, which was a little problematic. Of course, Chaos as a status effect is brutal in this game, as if it builds up fully, every Chaos attack that then lands will eat away at your maximum health. But I found that almost every Chaos boss in this game prioritizes you learning to block or dodge attacks, and thus when you have a good run, you're not going to get Chaosed in the first place. I think it ultimately balances out to be fair, just maybe not as much with Hismar specifically. The one little detail I love is that just like the Dragonkin we fought throughout the game, including Viper and the mini-bosses using his moveset, we learn that Dragon Horns are entirely cosmetic additions to the Dragonkin, and if they are broken, the owner is stunned. This is the same for Hismar. Both his left and right horns can be broken to cause a decently lengthy stagger animation, so if you decide to hold off on shattering the horns until the right moments, you can make Hismar your bitch, which for Khazan is very on brand. At number 10, we have Rankus, the 6th major boss of the game, and a real character to be sure. He's a bit of a sadistic himbo who has one of the craziest weapons I have seen in ages. It is a giant crossbow that is somehow reminiscent of a Gatling gun in appearance, but is also a fucking flamethrower. This man is a D&D artificer, and you know what? Given this is taking place in the DNF universe, it makes sense. For the first half of the fight, Rankus only focuses on the crossbow aspect of his kit, and if you're not a fan of delayed attacks, ooh, you're gonna hate this guy. I actually found the rhythm of his combos to be weirdly satisfying, as I was getting the timing down while seeing that he often does an extra twirl of his weapon before actually going for the hit in a lot of cases. It's not as hard to get used to if you pay attention to the animation itself, is what I'm saying. Sometimes he'll leap away to either fire crossbow bursts from afar, or to run at you like a crazy man firing explosive bolts in an attempt to blow you up. And no matter what Rankus is doing, oh, he is doing it with aplomb. I love him, he's insane. Then the flamethrower happens. Hitting half health, he'll break out a new series of fire attacks, many of which will catch you off guard. All of his crossbow shots now inflict flame when they hit, or are blocked, meaning you'll want to brink dodge them instead. He has multiple melee combos that end with him shooting a fiery cone of flames. He can slam the floor and charge a ground-shattering attack that I found really difficult to time the brink guard to. It's honestly better to just run away or take the stamina loss from a regular guard. But the two attacks that I struggled with and what he's infamous for, well, they certainly involve the flamethrower. The first is a combo, where he'll fire at you, then use a grappling hook to fly into the air, followed immediately by another horizontal fire blast in your direction, that you have to dodge before ending with a slam to the ground. It's that quick airborne fire blast that catches most players, myself included, out when we fight him at first time. His toughest attack though is his spin to win flame Beyblade. He will just begin spinning around, shooting his flamethrower and causing flames to shoot outwards. He constantly tries to track you, and this attack does feel insurmountable at first until you learn that to consistently avoid it, you just have to stay extremely close to the boss and circle around him in the opposite direction he's firing. Do this either by dodging or sprinting, and you will avoid the damage. I was forced to learn this because Rankus appears in a bonus mission, or I should say, his twin brother, who is in the lore, appears in a bonus mission, and only uses the flamethrower portion of Rankus's moveset. Overall, I'd say Rankus was one of the more fun fights I had to learn. He might not be my favourite, but there was a cadence to his moves that was oddly satisfying to me. I really think the devs hit it out of the park, and I hope they see this video and realise just how amazing these fights are. At number 9, we have Volbano, the 4th major boss of the game, and let me just get this one out of the way. Smash. Volbano was a guardian deer for the portside village of Frau, but upon being corrupted by chaos, he returned and helped lay waste to the entire town. It's sad because we read through lore snippets in the level that the kids called him Volby and that they liked to play. It was very much reminding me of the scrapped Watchman lore in Lies of P, and my heart, Volbano is the first boss I recall who you have to be careful against when brink guarding, as he incorporates the flame element into his combos and can slowly build up the flame bar if you get a bit too greedy. Now, I love his weapons. He wields a blacksmith's hammer and a giant chisel. Initially, he'll just attack you with the pair using blunt swings, and you should really try to learn his initial combos here as they become pretty simple to block and will really help you in the long run. At some point, he'll light the chisel on fire, which adds extra damage when you block, still worth it as long as you land the brink guards, but then the fun begins. Volbano will slam the chisel into the ground, and the entire room begins to coat with a fiery essence. You have to then run up a nearby ladder and climb to a second level of the arena as the boss is about to turn the floor into fire. Basically, when he uses his room wide, you either climb up to the upper level or drop back down to the lower level to avoid it. I really like this. It adds an extra dynamic you have to keep track of in the fight, and he'll get some new combos to go along with this, with a pretty fair timing for blocks. He's got a few burst attacks that if you can counterattack, you will also do major stamina damage. My favourite move has to be when he launches the chisel at you golf style by tossing and smacking it with his hammer. It is so extra and so unexpected because he rarely uses it that it always caught me off guard. The rest of the fight is just Volbano putting all these moves together and weaving them into a tough variant of his moveset, yet I think it's really rewarding to brink guard and punish, and it's one of the fights I'm really going to remember as I got that perfect experience. I got my first few attempts being a struggle as I think, how am I gonna beat this? But then you learn a combo or two, you get a little further, and suddenly you're getting better. Then you put it all together and you come out with the win. In Khazan, there is no way to cheese a victory in the early game. You have to have the tools to succeed, and you have to know how to use them, and I really respect that ideology. It's why I think games like Nine Souls or Bloodborne work so well. The developers are expecting their player base to rise to the occasion, and while that's not for everyone, it is for me. At number 8, we have Scalpel, the 12th major boss of the game. One of Khazan's old generals, he had a secret desire for bloodlust that he was able to keep in check while working under Khazan. However, by the events of the game, he was corrupted after a visit to see Princess Alina. He ended up making a pact with a blood demon for even greater power, granting him a massive general's coffin that he wields in combat alongside his own longsword. Scalpel is a boss that switches between two states as he fights, his regular mode where his combos are fairly predictable, and as long as you avoid his bigger attacks, you don't need to worry too much, though he does have some plague-based ranged moves that caught me off guard, and a berserk state that he enters when he either hits you with specific attacks or manages to complete specific combos. Examples are his grab, where he will launch you into the coffin itself, which is so fucking metal, I love it, as well as the best animated move in the whole game, Scalpel hopping on his coffin and driving it so he can run you over and stomp on you. I just think it's the funniest looking move I've ever seen. He is so unserious. Luckily, you can do enough damage to knock him off the coffin before he completes the move, giving him a small stagger and giving you the chance to lay the smack down. Beyond this, learn his combos, remember his burst attacks, and you'll come out on top. Mission cleared. Oh. Oh no. That's right! Blood for the blood god. The demon pulls Scalpel into the coffin and revives him in a frenzy, as you now have to face Scalpel in complete berserk mode. Luckily, he takes constant damage over time, as this is his last resort to defeat Khazan, so technically you can just run away and avoid him for the entire second phase, hit him once, and claim victory. Easier said than done, of course. Getting into the thick of it and parrying his tough attacks while learning how his combos have changed to show mastery over your old subordinate is the satisfying way to go. Given Scalpel already hits quite hard, I'm grateful that in terms of health, he's not as stacked as previous bosses, and with his second phase basically being a timed survival fight, it gives the player hope that they can overcome this challenge as they literally see their chances of winning ticking up as the boss ticks down. I also think Scalpel benefits from being a melee-focused battle after we've taken on 2 long-ranged mages in the previous 2 story missions. A little freshness tinged with blood. At number 7, we have Trocker, the 10th major boss of the game. The first of the late-game mage fights, I really think Trocker is one of the better balanced encounters, and that all comes down to how fair I feel her ranged kit is. Unlike Balerion, I never found Trocker's attacks to be overwhelming to the point of sheer confusion, and once you analyze her moveset, you can see how her different attacks flow into one another, and as long as you stay aggressive and keep up in her face, she can't stop your assault. Trocker is a water witch, loyal to the great mage Ozma, whom she has a one-sided romantic feeling for. So naturally, when we rock in, Ozma's best friend, who got all the attention back in the day, she sees Khazan and thinks, "Oh, finally I'm gonna kill my rival." Now, can we talk about how peak her visual design is? The giant pink witch's hat, the flowing dress cape with so many different textures, and that giant jellyfish parasol. Oh, she leans so heavily into her aquatic design that she looks like an ornate piece of coral, and the way she boxes you into the arena via a giant raging whirlpool, she's one of the first bosses where I really felt, oh fuck, she's got serious power behind her. Most of her projectiles can be break dodged through, which is recommended as she can inflict frost buildup through her attacks. One I really struggled to nail the timing of was her water beam. She floats to the side, then drops down to fire a super fast beam up to 3 times, and despite it not being a complex attack in terms of timing, I messed it up way more than I care to admit. She can summon thunderclouds, which can follow you until either the spell ends or you hit Trocker, and after vanishing, the spots that were rained on become debuff points you want to avoid. I also found myself getting caught by her grab attack because it's delayed enough that my muscle memory always had me dodging way too early. Tricky stuff. Luckily, she has some very easy melee combos she rarely breaks out, which can be brink guarded. She has a burst attack that is very easy to time for solid damage, and many of her magical combos you can stagger her out of if you hit her during the animation. She's a true mage through and through, brittle, and unlike Balerion, she doesn't shield herself. The most dangerous move of hers though is her Enrage attack, where she'll fly into the arena walls and begin swimming around in a circle. She'll also summon a series of red jellyfish around the arena to keep you penned inwards, and 2 blue jellyfish who give you a stamina buff if you're near them. She'll fire a series of small projectiles, then eventually a large projectile, before repeating the process a second time. Then afterwards she fires this insane barrage of attacks you can dodge, before burst attacking. You need to learn to deal with this attack and brink dodge it while keeping near the blue jellyfish to buff your stamina for the second wave of projectiles. If you can handle this attack, you can handle Trocker, though in the second half of the fight she also does break out some energy sword slashes, you know the types, and often follows them with a burst attack you can counter. Then it's just putting it all together to come out with the win. I know Trocker is a controversial pick as a boss I loved, because so many Souls-like players just hate the idea of ranged fights, mages, and attacks that last longer than 5 seconds, which is fair enough, but hey, turns out I actually enjoy when boss fights make me struggle. At number 6, we have Princess Alina, the 13th major boss of the game. Alina is an absolute tour de force in the world of Khazan, being a princess who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty with her powerful rapier. So, when she became corrupted and was locked away within the Grand Theatre, awaiting her own demise, she naturally ended up maturing into one of the tougher fights to overcome. What I really love about Alina is her musical motif. All of her chaos attacks are based around sound, with her summoning musical note projectiles and sound orbs, and every attack has its own sting to accompany it. Combined with how anytime she summons the chaos, she has this spectral audience appear behind her, and thematically, she's just fantastic to fight. She starts off with a traditional rapier moveset like every boss up to this point. You just need to learn the timings of her different combos so that eventually you can handle this early portion without stress. She doesn't do chip damage with her attacks, so guarding is perfectly safe, and the only attack you need to worry about is her 11-hit combo. That sounds like a lot, but the rapier slices are so quick, and the timing isn't that bad when you break down each set of slashes into their own groups. So you'll actually find yourself staggering her a lot if you can time those brink guards. She has a dash attack similar to Maluka earlier in the game, where you'll see a brief white flash that denotes "press the guard button now." That way you can stop her in her tracks and get some decent damage in. She may be a mage, but unlike other bosses, she will counterattack you if you try to stagger lock her, which I respect and makes it harder to cheese her. When the magic gets brought out though, ooh boy. Her main attack is this musical note orb where she'll shoot one onto the wall of the arena that will then explode into 5 trails of sound that you have to avoid. During this attack, regardless of when in the fight she uses it, you actually lose your lock-on, so you have to manually maneuver around to her so that when the attack finishes, you're in a position to punish. She can fire musical note barrages, she has a brutal grab attack that slashes at you with chaos scratches, she can summon a wall that looks like sheet music which will damage you if you touch it, and all of these attacks do chaos build-up, so you've got to learn to dodge them. Then she combines her melee and magic movesets, switching between them for the rest of the fight. With her melee attacks, she can do the dash move twice in a row now, and if you fail to brink guard them, you'll also get hit by a trail of chaos damage that killed me every time during my first few attempts. Once you get that timing down though, it is a fantastic punish window. The only move that caught me off guard towards the end was her musical note sound barrage, as she can summon more and more of those projectiles to explode along the walls, and they move faster. So no lock-on, plus up to 4 series of projectiles to avoid, equals a tough time. Alina feels really inspired. I think her design is stellar, her magic feels so personalized in a way that I adore, and her rather tragic story led me to feel for her, even in her final moments where she urges Khazan to continue down his path. Good stuff, just barely missed out on my top 5. At number 5, we have Maluka, the 7th major boss of the game. The leader of the Knives Vale bandits, Maluka acts as the barrier between the first and second half of Khazan, a real skill check to determine if the player has the knowledge to finish the rest of the game, and this is shown by giving him an absolutely insane second phase. But let's start with phase 1, super simple. He's got 2 great swords that he wields with various simple to learn combos. You need to learn the timings of phase 1 because it'll be your saving grace when Maluka is chaos later. I found his main attacks pretty easy to read, with his burst attacks being the only tricky ones. They can come out fairly suddenly, with some tough timings if you're right in Maluka's face, which led to some inconsistent interactions. Generally, his moveset is pretty small, so as long as you do good damage and stay aggressive, you can predict his moveset. His attack pattern is vaguely scripted, with him always starting with his 2 jumping swings, and depending on my aggression after the attack, he would either go into a burst attack or his 4-hit combo 99% of the time. The only tricky part I don't understand is his healing move. He can start screaming and regen his health, and in Phase 2 this only happens when he lands a lot of hits on the player. Often if you brink guard his combos, he won't heal. But in Phase 1, I don't fucking know, man. I wish I understood the mechanics of the heal because it drives people mad while learning the fight. Now, Phase 2, he fully succumbs to chaos, his body being corrupted as he unsheaths a katana and introduces an entirely new moveset to the group. This is terrifying, as his katana is about as anime as you can fucking get. But again, his moveset is very scripted. You'll always see him start with the same jump attack AoE, followed by a slow sheathing animation, where if you don't dodge, you get anime slashed like a grab attack. Then he does this big horizontal floor slash before launching into his largest combo, which you definitely need to learn the timing to. After which he does his fast katana sheath slashes, where you need to brink guard the moment you see his model crouching to kick him out of it, and then the rest of the moveset circles around vaguely depending on what you do. The real challenge is just locking in and surviving his katana initially. Eventually, he goes back to the dual greatswords, changing his attacks slightly, but still having the same general combos from Phase 1, allowing you to punish if you learned them. The only attack I really struggled with by the time I finished the fight were his air shotgun slashes. He charges his greatswords and then fires them with an air beam, then another, then another, then another, then another. You get the picture? I could never remember when this attack ended, and the moment you lose the rhythm, you're not getting it back. Maluka is brutal, absolutely. You will feel like you're making no progress learning this fight, but then it just starts to click. Even the chaos build-up, which is introduced in this boss fight, is mostly mitigated once you're able to dodge and block his moveset accordingly. It's just a really rough path to reach that point. Maluka's not my favourite fight, but he is one of the most memorable, and I think he's going to be very polarizing with the player base, but the people who get it, I think they get it hard. At number 4, we have Ozma, the final boss of the game. Khazan's best friend, who was seemingly turned to the darkness of chaos, who found himself wishing for humanity's end following the slaughter of his bride-to-be, as well as his experiments into the dark arts, it all culminates in one last battle. Two friends turned enemies, with Khazan believing that Ozma was behind everything. All of the people he lost, Elamane, Scalpel, Lord Parvel, even Reese, he channels that into his final fight with Ozma, and this, potentially, is a 3-phase fight. This is determined by a choice made by the player earlier in the level, which is dependent on how much you've done over the course of the game. If you go for the revenge ending, you only get 2 phases, but go for the chains or First Berserker endings, and you'll face his 3rd phase. It's similar to what 9 Souls did last year. Ozma's first phase is my least favourite, but only because even though it's his representation as a mage, I find a lot of his attacks very annoying. His ice slam I can avoid, but if I go to punish Ozma, I accidentally brush against the ice floor and get frosted. I find the brink guard timings for his various dark javelins to be tough to manage, leading to a lot of chip damage, and I'm not a fan of his flame and chaos flame circles, as he always does it to counter you while you're attacking him, forcing you to back off for a short while. But on the flip side, I like his beam attacks, they're easy to avoid. I like his melee combos, as while I didn't perfect them by the end, I felt like I knew which combos I could stagger him from, and I loved his room-wide attacks because they always had visual tells. The first, allowing him to grow his wings, he'll shine for a moment before exploding, and you have to block or dodge the moment that shine hits. Then the second, he'll summon this giant twin blade and fly down on you, which you can block. Then he'll fly into the air, fire some magic at you, and then a small bead of light will fall from the sky. When it's about to touch the ground, that's your dodge timing. I appreciate when big attacks have proper signaling, and Khazan was really good at this. Phase 2, and by extension Phase 3, are where I really loved Ozma's fight. He uses a completely different moveset, having a full Final Fantasy villain transformation, and he focuses a lot more on raw power and melee here. He has tough combos, he can push and pull you with air, he can summon chaos to slam down at you, and yet if you're good at brink guarding, you can shatter his countenance so easily. It's a tug of back and forth, as both of you are fighting for dominance. You might get him in a burst attack, do some damage, but then he catches you on the next combo, resetting you both to neutral. I love his massive attacks midway through the phase, where he fires projectiles at you from the sky, or can create a gravity sinkhole that pulls Khazan in, or a giant lance that explodes in an AoE. And this is all brought to a crazy point in Phase 3. Here he goes into a Chaos Frenzy, having the same mechanic as Scalpel Phase 2, where he'll take damage over time. But here, he uses the same moveset with a few new moves stringed together, and he's more likely to use burst attacks, which I think are pretty punishable from Ozma's moveset. It's tough. This almost broke me, I won't lie to you. Until I realized that I could craft and equip the Beast Slayer set and buff my Whirlwind attack, which was my main damage dealer. The moment this happened, I beat Ozma on my second or third attempt following the armor change, as it gave me the damage I needed to get over that last hurdle. Bloody difficult, can't imagine what it's like with the other two weapons, but I really found myself enjoying this fight by the end. I just wish Phase 1 wasn't so tedious to me as it ended up being. But that's just personal preference and not something that I think actively needs changing. At number 3, we have Blade Phantom, the second major boss of the game. The Blade Phantom is your companion through Khazan, but he doesn't start that way, as when he first enters your body, he's trying to take you over. He wants the power that Khazan wields, but doesn't need that pesky personality. So, when we reach the top of a mountain of trials, Blade Phantom appears to fight us. And for the second boss in the game, he is fucking insane. Blade Phantom lives up to the term Blade, as he has access to countless different weapon styles and movesets that he will combo up in an attempt to defeat you. Swords, lances, giant hammers, melee kicks, claws, it is all there. Which is so funny to me, as Blade Phantom's voice actor also voices Margit from Elden Ring, and they have basically the same gimmick, being an early game boss that styles on the player with a host of very different, very crazy weapons. Blade Phantom is also the first boss to use the stamina system, so you need to Brink Guard combos and wait for the boss to use up his own stamina, allowing you to attack and stagger him. But with just how much you need to learn and how many weapons he can wield, it's no wonder people struggle against him. Obviously, I could go back now and style the fuck out of Blade Phantom, but looking at my early game footage where I still didn't fully understand how to fight him, ooh, I can see him putting the struggle on me. Constantly low stamina, unable to time the counterattack to his burst attacks, learning certain combos only to forget others, and yet at no point did this fight feel unfair to me while I was figuring it out. It makes sense. If the Blade Phantom is this creature that wants your body, you have to overcome it to seal this pact between him and Khazan. But if it's too easy a fight, then the Blade Phantom doesn't really feel that powerful. They had to make this boss fight tough so you really feel like you earn Phantom's power at the end of it. Not to mention, that design, that armor is sexy. I'm just saying, I would smash the underworld ghost creature made of thousands of souls purely because that armor set is glorious. And then immediately after Blade Phantom, you unlock a bonus mission to face Keshta the Undying, who is literally a harder variant of this fight, which I was hyped for because I wanted to keep taking on Blade Phantom for a bit longer, and this kinda gave me that without going back to farm. There's not much else to say, especially compared to some of the later fights in the game with their crazy phases and movesets, but Blade Phantom is just a good old-fashioned duel, and long-term viewers know I love a duel. At number 2, we have Viper, the third major boss of the game. If Maluka is considered the skill check for the mid-game, then Viper is the skill check for the early game. You've taken on Blade Phantom, who is already a pretty difficult threat in his own right, but nothing could have prepared me for what was coming in Mission 3. Viper is a dragonkin who holds a scale of Hismar, the Berserk Dragon, the very foe that Khazan and Ozma teamed up to defeat. It's clear that they want to revive their fallen master, or at least draw upon his power, and Viper, can I just say, smash. Viper is a twink, but he is a twink with a twin blade, and that makes him the deadliest twink on the planet. Does that mean he's got a Twink Blade? Ha 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 ha. When I first fought him, I found his combos were very hard to read because Twin Blades are inherently very show-offy. As in, there's a lot of fluff in those animations, so you have to look out for those actual moments of impact to learn when to guard. The first part of this fight should be the player learning his combos. They're not very long, and they will help you survive the first half of the health bar, as once he hits half health, he begins adding new combos to the table. He can throw the Twin Blade like a boomerang, which you need to block outward and inwards when it returns. He has this Sky Slam attack with a slight delay that you can dodge to get a good attack window. He has this leap that I constantly mistimed because I kept trying to dodge it when I should have blocked it. And he uses his grab attack really often, which has a slight shine and sound effect you can use to figure out when it's coming. Aside from this, his combos get longer, and you need to be more aware of your stamina and positioning. Like his Ma though, Viper has a horn that you can smash during the fight for a brief stagger, something I'd still love the detail of across all the Dragonkin. It's a tough fight, really difficult for a new player, but when the Twin Blade moveset clicked, I didn't make mistakes. This was perhaps the easiest moveset from the early bosses for me to learn in that sense. And then phase 2 hits. This is why Viper lands this high on the list, because while I adore the phase 1 to death, and on its own it is still a top 5 fight for me, the addition of a second phase this early in the game, and it's a completely new moveset you have to deal with, is just the most ballsy decision I have seen a new Souls-like make. Viper phase 2 is aggressive, he grows massively, and his attacks become more brutal, more ferocious. His intelligence is hampered as he begins to run on instinct. The arena becomes devoid of color as it desaturates around this creature. It's so cool. I don't find his attacks particularly exciting, I'll say, but the atmosphere that accompanies those attacks is second to none. There's a moment midway through where Viper roars and the entire screen fills with darkness, the electricity striking to reveal Viper's form like a horror movie as he begins to lunge at the player with sweeps and stuns. It's genuinely terrifying, with the only light coming from Viper's own eyes. I don't feel I learned phase 2, I won't lie, it was more about surviving and having the heals to deal with the attacks I could see, but that doesn't take away from how insanely epic I felt this entire fight was. From the pre-battle cutscenes, to the transformation, to the finishing blow, Viper is a fight I will remember for a very long time. Yet there's one battle in this game that hit me just that tad bit harder. At number 1, we have Reese, the penultimate boss of the game. Reese was a childhood friend of both Khazan and Ozma, the most important woman in both of their lives. She supported them through thick and thin, and even planned to marry Ozma prior to the Emperor's betrayal. But in a cruel twist of fate, she was assassinated by soldiers who were under the control of a dark force, and Ozma, seeing this, found his humanity shattered. He tried to revive her, but it wasn't truly Reese. It was a corruptor whom he allowed to stay at the temple in the capital to await Khazan. This is one of the few pre-fight cutscenes where Khazan shows real emotion at the thought of needing to fight Reese. He's utterly heartbroken when he realizes she was overtaken by chaos, and you can feel that in the air. And also, in the banger of an OST that is Reese's boss theme, the female vocalist goes so hard in the background, in a way that reminds me of Nier Automata, giving this entire fight a weighty sense of tragedy, and everyone I've seen online has had only positive things to say about Reese's theme, so I'm sticking to social norms, I guess. Her first phase is very chill, in a way that feels intentional. She uses a variety of magic attacks to try and defeat Khazan, but none of them feel particularly brutal or overtly dangerous. She can summon sigils beneath the ground you have to dodge from. She's got the usual magic shots that any mage boss has. She can summon walls to try blocking you in with her, though these walls have the ability to block magic themselves, so if you just walk around to the other side, you can stop a lot of her follow-up attacks from hurting you. She's got a simple burst attack you can counter. Ultimately, Reese is not an issue, and that's kind of the point. You're wailing on this image of Khazan's friend. It doesn't feel good whittling her health and staggering her easily. It's just very sad. So when phase 2 hits and she transforms fully into a creature of chaos, and Khazan is begging Phantom, but Phantom says she cannot be saved, oh, it's such delicious angst and tragedy. She takes a lot of her attacks from phase 1 and brings them to phase 2, but with her almost Valkyrie-like design, she has a lot more melee attacks with her wings she can break out. I love how at half health she has this move where she'll teleport and begin attacking you periodically. The timing can be learned, but it's just so cool seeing her warp in and out of the battlefield to strike you down. Timing more combos with magic projectiles and just generally becoming a more aggressive opponent is all Reese needed to be a threat. Her weapon becomes something akin to a scythe, and she just has this energy that feels exciting. By the time I struck her down, I felt powerful, but I also just felt sad for Khazan. I wanted him to get at least one win, one friend that he cared about to survive. But in stories of revenge, that's just not the case. Reese hammers home the human side of Khazan, and in a game that is filled with so many heartless monsters, it's nice to see our main character's humanity. Reese just had that much of an impact, and alongside her music, the arena with the white flowers that turn blood red, oh, it is just perfection. And that's my list. Which Khazan boss is your favourite? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. I want to give a shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing, thank you so much. It's $49.99 a month. No, it's not, it's $4.99 a month. That would be insane. And it gets you early access to certain videos, it gets you a shout out in the description and at the end of videos as well, and you get special access to extra Let's Plays. It's very fun. So yeah, if you guys want to follow me, I'm over on Blue Sky, and I'll see you next time for another video. Adios.